Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by for a bit of Yuletide joy. So it was inevitable, 2025, basically 41 years after the debut of the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, we've got the remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night by the name of Silent Night, Deadly Night, but you'd probably put in parentheses 2025. If you wouldn't, I definitely would. Years and years ago, was it the 20-teens? There was a movie that came out, I'm pretty sure I reviewed it on this channel. I think I got the DVD for cheap back in the day. A movie by the name of Silent Night, where Santa had a blowtorch. That came out. I kind of thought that was supposed to be the remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night, but maybe not. Maybe that wasn't. Maybe it was loosely based. Anyway, one thing I liked about that is it didn't use the whole title, Silent Night, Deadly Night. I might have been wrong. Maybe it wasn't a remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night. I can't remember what Silent Night was about. All I know is it got blowtorch Santa or whatever. I don't think I was particularly impressed with Silent Night, but cutting to 2025, 41 years after the debut of Silent Night, Deadly Night, as I said, we get Silent Night, Deadly Night, 2025. We don't see a lot of movies in the theater, but this one, my curiosity was just piqued so high, and I actually liked the guy from Halloween Ends. So I thought of making him Billy was actually kind of a interesting idea. So me and Beth ventured out. It was actually single-digit temperatures when we went out to see Silent Night, Deadly Night 2025. We ventured out to see it, and do I regret venturing out in single-degree Fahrenheit temperatures to see it? Probably more or less. I grew up with the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. I think it was 5 years old. The movie might have been 5 years old when I first saw it at the tender age of a 12 or 13. And instantly Silent Night, Deadly Night, the original from 1984, when I saw it at the tender age of a 12 or 13, it was an instant classic to me, and it was what any frickin' horror-crazed boy, preteen boy at the time would have just been crazy for. I think you've got 4 separate sets. Is it 4? 3 or 4 separate sets of breasts, bosoms, of varying sizes, and all but one set are natural, I think. And you've got copious amounts of like TNA, mostly just T. Well, you can see Linnea Quigley's in those. Yeah, you can kind of see her A. But copious amounts of TNA, copious amounts of unrated, if you're lucky enough to see the unrated version back in the day or now or any time, copious amounts of violence. And, I obviously reviewed Silent Night, Deadly Night on this channel, so I won't talk too much about it. Feel free to check out my review of that movie. But the original is wonderfully simple, simplistic, linear, and just an all-around classic. So, obviously at this stage of the game, 2025, going into a remake of yet another beloved film, was, kind of skeptical. But honestly, the trailer kind of was like, God, it could go both ways. Like, it kind of seems cool, and it kind of reminds me of the first remake of Christmas, what was it? Black Christmas. So, the first remake of Black Christmas in 2005 or 6-ish or something. The trailer kind of reminded me of the feeling of that. I think I actually liked the first remake of Black Christmas, and I do probably think that that's a better movie than this one. I'm going to do my best to not do any major spoilers, but what I will say is this movie's just like got way too many moving parts for my taste. And granted, if you're doing a remake, you could either do it the Psycho 1998 route and do a shot-by-shot remake of the original, or you could do something more like this, where you're taking the premise of the original and kind of, basically switch it around as much as you possibly can. I don't really have a problem one way or another with it as a whole. It's like, the guy can do what he wants with it or whatever, but in my opinion, it's just way too many moving parts, way too many reasons for this and that. And I will say, the movie, when it first started with Grandpa in the nursing home or the old folks home or whatever, that scene, I was like, oh my God, Beth, what did I do bringing us here in single-digit Fahrenheit temperatures to see this? Like, it starts with like a close-up on some old woman's face, and you're like, oh, so I thought they were going to ditch Grandpa and do like Grandma instead. Of course, these days that would be very expected. But no, the old woman that the movie starts with, like, creepy old woman goes away, and it becomes, Billy, and go visit Grandpa in his room, and it's just cinema, 21st century cinematic, just over cinematic, of course, as you'd come to expect it. The great thing about the original is it doesn't. It's just. I gotta tell you, I was so lucky to grow up in the '70s and the '80s and stuff, or the late '70s and all of the '80s and stuff, because movies were just so cool back then. Now they're just so overly like cinematic, and they're just like, a lot of times a young director or something, or someone with no talent, I can't say no talent, maybe minimal talent, a lot of times they use long lenses because they think like, ooh, if you have a subject that's, it's blurred to an inch behind it and an inch in front of it, like that's artistic. We can just get instant artisticness by using long lenses and just having the depth of field be like an inch or a half of inch depth of field of the focal, what's visible, visibly in focus. And a lot of this movie's that, a lot of it's like, what, they make lenses that are smaller, shorter than 100 millimeters or 150 or 200. There's maybe they forgot them or something, but yeah, overall, like the overall style of this is not very impressive. Where, yeah, I keep thinking back to the original and just how the simplistic nature of it, and just the just forward, bam, there it is in your face, and the way it was. Even if you look at that in the editing with, the assault on the mom and dad in the car and the shooting and stuff, like, it's just so great. And the music, I recently found out the music and all the songs from the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, you can listen to them on Apple Music. And I'm like, God, the music is so good for the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. Is so exploitative, just in your face, and it sounds so good in stereo, like, in the actual soundtrack. And yeah, like I keep going back, to the original, just how much I love the original. I think the best thing about this movie is the fact that, actually, as I said, I do like the guy from, the main guy. I can't remember what his name was. His name Corey in Halloween Ends. I actually liked that, the performer. That guy was good, and I think I recognized him, but I wasn't able to place it because of the way his hair was. But wasn't he also in The Monkey? I think as well, The Monkey, my favorite film of 2025 that I've seen. Granted, I haven't seen a lot of them, but I think he was in The Monkey as well. And I recognize him, but I'm like, who is? I can't place him, but I think that's him if I'm not mistaken. But I like the actor, and honestly, I mean, for him to be Billy, that's fine. That works for me or whatever. I'm fine with that. But at the end of the day, they just switched this around so much that, and granted, like I say, I'm not a big fan of remakes in general, but I'm just trying to think of a remake that doesn't really matter, that I like or whatever, but, and how to do remakes. Well, Night of the Living Dead, 1990, I mean, to me, that's a good example of like a remake. It basically follows, the premise of the original, but it just changes up some things more, some things in that and stuff. Whereas this, like, there's really no rules to a remake. One could argue, well, why remake the movie to be exactly, like it was the first time? Well, that makes sense. So this guy chose to kind of take the premise and just completely just switch it around to where the guy's, I'm not going to try not to spoil it too much, but where the guy's almost like a superhero with a voice in his head. Basically, it's the same thing with, like, the parents were gunned down by Santa and he witnessed it. He doesn't have a little brother. There's no little Ricky baby in this movie. But he's got this voice in his head. And it's one of these movies where you kind of see a bit of the assault at the beginning of the movie, and as it wears on, you see more and more of the assault kind of thing. And it's one of these movies that peels back the layers as it progresses, kind of a thing. By the halfway through, you kind of know what's going on or whatever, and this and that, and peels things back throughout the course of the movie. What I love, I'm not so keen on that kind of movie mechanics. What I love, once again, about the first one is just its relentless linearness. Just bam, just forward motion, bam, linear, bam. I can't express how much I love that about the original from Silent Night, Deadly Night from 1984, and how good it works. And when you go in as a fan of that film to this, and you're just like, whatever. But I'm really trying to struggle with. I guess I can say I'm trying to struggle with what I can say that's not too crazy spoilerish. I guess I was gonna say more than that, but I'll without ruining too much of it. It's really ironic that you're going to take a movie called Silent Night, Deadly Night, which kind of implies a single night. Granted, there's two nights in the original: the night when he's a kid and witnessed the murder of his parents and stuff, and then the night when he's older and he, Christmas Eve when he freaks out and does his killing as an 18-year-old or whatever. So granted, there's two nights in the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, but there's just one night, in each of the years or whatever. And what this movie, it kind of makes no sense, so the title Silent Night, Deadly Night, would suggest one night of deadliness. Whereas this movie, I'm not going to go too much into it. Every year, it's like, well, we'll definitely say definitely more than one night in December where Billy does this. And I'm not going to, does this being, go out and kill someone or whatever. I'm actually not going to reveal. I kind of was going to reveal more than I think I am going to. I try not to do spoilers so much these days, but give you guys a reason to see it. But yeah, as the movie wears on and you realize what the voice in his head is, and the voice, I don't really have a problem with the voice in his head until you kind of find out. I'm not going to spoil this until you find out why the voice is in his head later on. That's actually kind of more or less the last, I don't know if that's somewhere in the last half, the last third of the movie you find that out or whatever. But as I said, the movie, reveals itself layer by layer as it progresses. But so without spoiling too much, Billy as an adult now is kind of just lives on this road, kind of a guy who just, goes town to town, state to state, whatever. This particular year in December, he finds himself, I was really surprised, in Hackett. They don't say the word Minnesota in the movie, but you can see several missing kids posters that says Hackett, comma, MN. So this movie takes place in Minnesota, in Hackett, Minnesota, and I did some research. I guess there actually is a Hackett, Minnesota. Obviously, well, not obviously, but of course this movie wasn't filmed in Minnesota. I'm pretty sure it was filmed in Canada in the spring of 2025, April or March or April or something. But it was really kind of interesting. Oh, I should probably say I have always been and am currently a Minnesotan myself, so having it take place in this, Minnesota, the state I was born, grew up, and reside in, was actually kind of cool. And it only makes sense because, it's such a cold and frickin' snowy state, usually in December and stuff. And of course, just like so many of these Christmas horror movies, there's not a whole lot of cold and not a whole lot of snow to be seen in the movie. And this is one of my complaints about it is, like, unlike the original, which has that wonderful bullies bullying the sledders and they have a decent amount of outdoor scenes, or at least enough to where it's good enough for me. There's a lot of outdoor stuff. There isn't a whole hell of a lot of outdoor scenes in this movie, and me being just like an outdoor enthusiast and stuff, that's one of the reasons I'm a huge, Friday the 13th is my favorite horror franchise, or my favorite franchise of all time, just because it's like the outdoors frickin' slasher franchise or whatever. But yeah, like so many movies nowadays, this movie just mostly takes place indoors with long lenses, and it just feels so claustrophobic and just this and that, and it does follow everything. Well, so his name is Billy, but for some reason they changed his last name. I think it was, Billy and Ricky were Codwell or something like that in the original movie, and movies, like the first three films, and they changed Billy's last name for some reason. He's traveling, he's like a traveling murderer, so he finds himself in Hackett, Minnesota. He wants to get a job. He finds a job at Ira's. Instead of toys, it's Ira's, I don't know what it is, antiques in this movie. I don't know why they changed it from a toy store, which makes more sense for a Christmas movie, especially if you're going to have a Santa with kids in there that sit on Santa's lap. Makes more sense. For some reason, they changed it from like a toy store to like maybe a novelty or just antique store or something. It's not specifically toys, but maybe holiday decorations or antique store or something. In this movie, it's still Ira's, and Mr. Sims is the the owner, and Ira, they expand on a little bit more about like the history of the store. Ira was, you know, the Mr. Sims wife and the mother of Mr. Sims' daughter, who is Pam, you know, Pamela from the original. I don't think Pamela's necessarily was revealed that Pamela's related to Mr. Sims in the original, but Pamela's the buxom babe employee, one of them from the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Pamela in this movie is the daughter of Mr. Sims. The store is named after the now deceased mother, which kind of bums Pamela out. See, I mean, we get a little more like whatever. He puts a little more detail into his version of Silent Night, Deadly Night. I don't have a problem with that, but why change the toy store to like an antique store? And then it makes no sense later on when you've got a Santa Claus with kids, you know, in the store with kids sitting on his lap. Like, why would kids be going to an antique store? Like, it'd be like the most boring thing for kids, unless it's the one place in time in this Hackett, Minnesota town where Santa is. You know, he's not going to be at the bar or the strip club or the bowling alley, so we'll have Santa, you know, have the kids sit on Santa's lap at the antique store. But that's one of the changes from the original that, you know, just like with the title, which indicates one night of deadliness, and this one just taking place night after night after night after night. Like, I hope no one rips off this title, but you know, you should have really called this 24 Days of Axmas or something. I kind of spoiled, I guess, more than I intended to with that, but that's life. So earlier I mentioned that when the movie started and with his grandpa in the nursing home or whatever, I'm not going to spoil what happens with the grandpa scene, but after the grandpa scene was over, I was like, oh, Beth, I was so apologetic. I was like, what have I done? You know, I drug us out here in the 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, by the way, there was only 2 other people. There was 4 of us in the. We saw it on Sunday, so 2 days after it opened, and there was 4 of us. Me and Beth and another couple of people in the theater. So that's another reason I wanted to see it right away, because it might not, you know, it might be, you know, out of the theater for the next, you know, week or whatever. But yeah, when the grandpa scene ended, I'm like, oh, Beth, I'm so sorry. What have I done? You know, dragging you to this and stuff. You know, she's a fan of the original as well and stuff. So, so I will say that it started horribly, like with the grandpa scene, horribly. But what I found as it wore on is maybe halfway point. There's something that happens maybe the midway point of the movie that kind of warmed me over, and you know, it starts like garbage. If you're watching, you know, if you watch this movie later on or whatever, if you see it online, don't turn it off, because it does, in my opinion, get better. It starts like just beyond horrible, but it does get better. Does it ever reach greatness? No, I mean, not in my opinion. I mean, it does what it does, and you know, the one scene, without spoiling it, I'll just say I'll call it the convention scene, or the whole a group of people are gathered, and that's all I'll say. And something may happen at that group of people that are gathered for a you know, they're enthusiasts about something or other. I'll just say that. Like, that scene was kind of interesting and kind of kicked the movie into, you know, second or third gear, and kind of at that point the movie, you know, really revealed its playful nature. And it's something I appreciated, you know. I mean, it was, I mean, at that point it's kind of leaving the realm of reality behind, and going a little, I mean, not that it's couldn't be reality, but yeah, it goes a little, it reminded me of like him wanting to go Quentin Tarantino or something. I think that's it felt like, and even Beth, when, like, there's a name of a character, and it says, like, you know, someone, if Billy sees that's naughty or an asshole or something, and we find out their first name, it'll be like first name and kill or something, or kill this the first name or something, and Beth's like, this just reminds me of Kill Bill or whatever, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm like, oh, okay, it didn't really remind me necessarily Kill Bill until that scene, and I'm like, so it does have, like, especially during that scene where all them enthusiasts that share a passion for the same thing are all gathered together, and something might happen like that, it just feels like complete, you can see like that, yeah, it feels like it might have felt kind of like a scene in what the hell was it? You know, Tarantino's Django Unchained or whatever. But yeah, that scene was both kind of like fun and both like give me a break at the same time. But you know, so like halfway through or something. Well, I guess maybe it revealed its playfulness maybe a little more, you know, before that. But at that point, it really was just kind of like my dad would have probably had fun with that scene. You know, he probably would have had fun with this movie more or less. He like me, he also really very much enjoyed Christmas horror movies and stuff. So he probably would have enjoyed that scene. If you've seen the trailer, well, I think there's more than one trailer. It might be in both of them or all of them or whatever. But in one of the trailers, there's definitely a little bit of it shows like the you know, kind of its version of the you know, it shows that the antlers scene, you know, the classic being impaled on the antlers will be in this. And when it happened in the movie, it's kind of like Eyes Wide Shut. Remember when the trailers and the teaser, you know, on TV and stuff, where it showed, you know, like Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman and in the mirror and like baby did a bad thing, and it made it look like it was just you're gonna be able to see like Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman have sex for real, and it's just gonna be this, you know, 2-hour 40-minute porno with just Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman having sex. And it's just like when you go to see the movie Eyes Wide Shut, it's just like you don't really see any more in the movie of that scene than you did in the trailer, and it's just I don't even know what I'm trying to. Oh, the antlers scene. Yeah, it reminded me of that. Like in the actual movie itself, Silent Night, Deadly Night 2025, like there's not very much more of the antlers scene than is in the trailer. There's more, obviously, but the way that, here's another example where I'm just, you know, comparing it to the original and just being like, wow, the original is so amazing. Not only do you have like this nearly naked Linnea Quigley, you know, just in her Daisy Dukes, just running around and checking on the cat topless. I love the original movie. Buddy, punish. But yeah, the original antlers scene, like if you're gonna do this, try to up the ante and improve on it. I mean, it's the original antlers scene is just so much better in every single way possible than the antlers scene in this movie. And it was kind of like I reviewed a movie. Oh, it was yeah, at some point when you're going to see it? Yeah, you're going to probably see it next year. My review, I already did the review, but I already did the review for the remake of or not the remake, like the Legacy sequel, the, you know, I Know What You Did Last Summer, 2025. It reminded me of that, where it was like, although this guy probably has more interest and more of a passion for horror movies than it felt like the director of that movie did. It's like the antler scene was so like, you got to be kidding me. That's all you got. And in thinking about it, like a lot of the kill stuff did seem like, you know, I like movies like the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, where you kind of, you have a kill and you just like you just enjoy the kill. You just, it's not like a kill that happens really quick and then you're on to the next thing. Like you embellish it, especially with the unrated version of the antler scene in the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. It's embellished and embellished, and you just, it goes on and on. You know, she's pushed further, 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 you know, and it seems like the antlers scene, like so many of the kills in this movie, just it happens so quick and it's done and whatever. And obviously there's like a little bit of an attempt to kind of do, you know, his own version of the decapitation with going down the sled. Of course, it's, you know, same thing where it's like happens so quick and it's over so quick, whereas the original is just so wonderfully embellished to the head, or the body coming down, you know, headless on the sled, and then the head bouncing down and this kind of stuff, and body falling, you know, headless corpse falling next to the head. Like, it's just, those are the 80s was the decade for slashers, just period. You know, just end of story. And in the 80s they knew how to embellish them kill scenes. And now, unless you're like in a violent nature, a lot of times it's just like they're almost like they're like this movie too. I think even though it's got violence and gore and stuff, it's just like it just feels like they're allergic to the kills. Like if they do a kill, it's like gotta be over as quickly as possible or something. And I just don't understand that. I really don't understand that. It's just, especially if I can only assume this guy is like a fan of horror movies or slasher movies and stuff. Like, if you're doing it, in my opinion, why not do it right? But of course, right is subjective or whatever. His right is definitely different than my right, but I think my right's right. One of the things that I actually appreciated about this movie is it does use a handful, I can't tell exactly how many, maybe 3 or 4 of the songs, the original songs that I think were written and recorded for the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. I can't remember, I don't think Warm Side of the Door is featured in this movie, but some of the other songs from Silent Night, Deadly Night, the songs that are featured in the movie are featured in this movie, so that was appreciated. And I'm pretty sure the opening from the original film, the kid going, Santa's watching, Santa's, all that stuff, I think they kind of use that, they use it over and over and over in the background, but it's really like slowed down when he's going mental or when he's having, whatever he's doing, his psychotic thoughts or whatever. So I think, I thought I heard it originally and that kept playing, throughout the course of the movie, and then by the time it happened for the third, fourth, or fifth time, I'm like, okay, yeah, I think I hear that kid's voice. It's like super, they do a bit of music that's super slowed down with that kid going, Santa's creeping, or whatever. So that's one thing I appreciated, being a huge fan of the original, is that they used a handful of some of them songs from the original. But if they didn't use Warm Side of the Door, they really should have, because that's kind of one of the, in my opinion, one of the standout songs from the original. So yeah, go check out Warm Side of the Door, the song. In closing, it was kind of a mixed bag. Like, I think it was, kind of rubbed me the wrong way at the end of the day, just how much it was just so many moving parts and this and that, and just how it, and as I said, like, I don't think there should be rules for how to do remakes, so I'm not criticizing the writer-director of this. I mean, if he's doing it, he should be able to have the freedom to do what he wants to do. And, on one hand, you can see, if you're doing a remake of something, change it up and do his own version. I'm on board with that. It just so happens that I'm not, so crazy about his version. It's 21st century way to do the movie, I guess, with, this Quentin Tarantino's, switching between, now and present day flashback, and all this kind of stuff. More power to you. Do a version of this that you want to do. But in my opinion, especially in the last half, when things were revealed or whatever, and this and that, and of course I didn't mention, that there's a romantic relationship between Billy and Pamela. I don't know if they call her Pamela. I think it's Pam is said, or I don't know if Pamela is said. I just call her Pamela. I just, Pamela, naughty, Pamela. I just think of the first film, or the original film. But yeah, I didn't mention that there's a relationship, a romantic relationship between Billy and Pamela. And the trailer makes it look like she might become like a sidekick killer, or might be like turn into a Bonnie and Clyde or Natural Born Killers kind of a thing. I guess I won't spoil it one way or another. The movie, it does end with a kind of a sequel setup, but this movie is doing so, I can only imagine, well, at least it is where I live, somewhere in Minnesota, and the 2 days after it opened didn't do very well in the showing we saw. But hopefully this movie does bad enough business where they're not going to make the sequel, because I'm not going to spoil how the sequel for this movie, how this movie ended and how the sequel was set up. I'm not going to spoil that, but needless to say, I wouldn't be very necessarily keen on seeing that. Of course, with the things being how they are these days, it's not surprising that they set up the sequel the way they did. It's just like, oh my gosh, there's probably a lot of, I won't even say that. But anyway, my star rating, I guess that'll pretty much do it for my review. I did kind of enjoy the movie's playfulness. It had a fun playfulness to it, I guess. But as I said, it seems allergic to kill scenes. Like, if you're doing a kill scene movie, don't hesitate on the kill scenes. It's like doing an adult film with like very little adult stuff going on. That's probably a better example or whatever. that I could have done. But yeah, that's what came to mind. I was just thinking of the explicit nature of the first movie, and as I said, I think there's four separate pairs of boobies, 8 total boobies in the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, and there's like no boobies in this. Of course, it's crazy how things have really just changed for the worse. You know, boobies galore in the 80s, and 2025 no boobies, and yeah, so appreciate the playful nature of the movie, but it was just so, like I say, too many moving parts, and like so many movies now, feel like they have to explain every single detail of this movie and why every detail is what it is, and it's just like, you don't have to explain everything, you know. And the movie that really kind of started doing that I can remember was like, you know, the Rob Zombie Halloween movie, where it's like, we have to explain why Michael was, you know, pure evil, and it just made it, you know, it just took the magic completely away. Like, you know, pretty much every other person, or every 2 out of 3 people, or maybe every 3 out of 3 people is bullied as a kid, you know, and not all of us turn into Michael Myers. Like, ooh, the Rob Zombie Halloween, man, you know, like, here, this is why Michael becomes pure evil, because he was bullied as a kid and had an asshole for a stepfather and a stripper mom. That's why Michael Myers is pure evil. Like, it's just such a crock of shit. And although I don't loathe this movie anywhere as much as, you know, Rob Zombie's Halloween, it's the same kind of thing where it's like, why do we have to explain every single motivation, every single thing he does, and the reason behind it's just like, and towards the end of the movie, when you see like I guess the source, or the reason, the source / reason for the voice in his head, you'll be like, what the fuck? So yeah, I was really struggling on the star rating. I think that at the end of the day, as much as I do appreciate some things about it, I can only go as high as 1.5 stars out of 4 stars for Silent Night, Deadly Night, parentheses, 2025, parentheses. Like I say, just, you know, I'm biased because I grew up in the late 70s and all of the 80s and the 90s and stuff, but I gotta tell you, you know, horror movies, slasher movies were really really enjoying their heyday back then, man. Freaking 80s and stuff, late 70s, 80s. Wow, what a time. And the more time progresses and goes on, the more I just count myself lucky to have grown up in that era, you know. But I would imagine everyone thinks their era that they grew up in is the best era to grow up in, so, you know. But the kids that are growing up now, man, of course, you know, yeah, I would have loved to have had like a frickin' HD or 4K video technology and a little, you know, slab like this as a kid, and being able to edit it on this and have such a high quality end version. Like, it would have been so great to be able to shoot the quality video that you can so easily shoot now and cut it and stuff as a kid. But we managed by hooking, you know, 2 VCRs to each other to cut stuff, and using the Fisher-Price PXL 2000 video cameras. So we managed. Like, when you're a kid, you know, things are going to be so much technologically advanced in the future. You don't know that. You're just dealing with what you've got at the time. You know, VHS and you know, go on to be high 8, and I'm just blabbing. But anyway, I appreciate you guys watching until the end. If you did, probably no one did. If you did, thank you very much for doing so. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, we'll catch you on the next video.